Hello, this is Zamanzadeh from zzNetworking.com. In this tutorial video, we will be discussing grouping. In order to see better, press this icon to view full screen. Grouping creates groups of rows that share some common characteristics. When you group rows, any calculations indicated in the select command are performed for the entire group. Using the group by clause is used to group data on a particular column, such as rep num, and then calculate statistics. It can be used to find the answer to a problem such as the following. For each sales rep, list the rep number and the average balance of the rep's customers. Because you need to group customers by rep number and then calculate the average balance for all customers in each group, the group by clause must be used. When rows are grouped, one line of output is produced for each group. The only things that can be displayed are statistics calculated for the group or columns whose values are the same for all rows in a group. Now, after giving you some examples, I think this concept will become much more familiar to you. First of all, select all columns from the customer table so we can view the table. Now, for this first exercise, remember back when we used aggregate functions. Select the average balance from the customer table, and to do so, simply say select AVG, the balance in parentheses, from customer. And that gives us the average balance. Now suppose we want to add another column name to this. Suppose we want to find the average balance based on customer name. Now go ahead and code the following. First, go ahead and just simply code select customer name, comma, average balance in parentheses from customer. Run this. You get an error, and it says not a single group function. This is why you have to use a group by clause. Whenever you're using an aggregate function, such as average balance, or max, min, sum, or count, and any other column, you must always group by that other column for this to work. So now go ahead and add to the code group by customer name. And now we get a list of our customer names and the average balance for each customer. Now, let's go ahead and code the following. In our first code, we will select the sum of balance from the customer table. That gives us one number. Now in the second code, we want to select the customer name and the sum of balance from the customer. Well, since sum is an aggregate function, just like average, and since we have another column, the customer name, we have to once again group by the customer name. And now we have a list of the customer names along with the sum of their balance for each customer. Now, let's try the same thing with the count function. In our first code, we use the count function. Select count, asterisk, all rows from the customer table. We have 10 rows in the customer table. Now suppose we want to find, in addition, once again, the customer name and count all rows from customer. We have to again group by the customer name, since count all rows is an aggregate function. And here we have a list of all the customer names and how many rows they occupy. We can test this again with the max function. In our first code, we have select max balance from customer. If we execute this, we get the highest value for the customer table, the highest balance for the customer table. Now suppose we want to list the customer name and the maximum balance for each customer. We have to once again group by the customer name, since max balance is an aggregate function and customer name is not. Hit Control Enter, and now we have a list of all the customer names and their maximum balances. Now, I'm going to give you one more example using this, and then we're going to make it a little more complicated. Suppose we want to find now the minimum balance. Well, once again, we say select min, balance in parentheses, from customer. and this gives us the lowest balance for this table. Now suppose once again we want to find the customer name and the lowest balance for each customer. We say select customer name, min balance, the aggregate function, from the table customer, and we group by the customer name since min balance once again is an aggregate function. And now we get a list of all our customers and their minimum balances. Well, now that we've gone through the basics of group by, let's make this a little more complicated. Suppose you want to find more than one aggregate function. You want to find the average balance and the sum of the balance and the customer name. Now, since average balance and sum of balance are both aggregate functions, you don't group by either one of those, but since customer name is not an aggregate function, you have to put the customer name once again in the group by clause. We execute this, and now we have the customer name and the average balance and the sum of balance for every customer. Now suppose in addition to this, we decide that we want to include two non-aggregate functions, customer name and customer number. Well, since we have two aggregate functions, average balance and sum of balance, and two non-aggregate functions, customer name and customer num, we have to group by both the customer number and the customer name. We do this by simply putting a comma after the first column. We say group by customer num, comma, customer name. We enter this, and now we have a list of the customer numbers, customer names, and the average balance, and this is the sum of balance for each customer. Now, let's try another quick example. Suppose we want to restrict our output even further. Suppose we want to have the customer number, the customer name, the average balance, and now we want to give the average balance column, which you see here it says AVG balance, we want to give it a pretty title. So we say as average. We give it an alias. And suppose for the sum of balance, we want to give it also a nice pretty name as opposed to sum, balance in parentheses, so we say as sum. From customer, which is our table we're working with, now we want to restrict the rows of information. So we say where customer num is greater than 400. So that way we only see the customer num, customer name, average balance, and sum of balance for our customers whose customer number is greater than 400. We still have to group by the customer number and customer name, since those two columns in our select statement are not aggregate functions. And furthermore, we want to sort our information by customer number. So after we say group by, we say order by customer num. Hit Control Enter, and now we have a list of our customer numbers, customer names, the average balance, which has the nicer title average, and the sum of the balance, which has the nice title sum, for each and every one of our customers. Now, just to show you what we're going to be covering in the next video, a brief preview, we're going to be dealing with something called halving. The where clause restricts rows of information. We can say where customer number is greater than 400. Suppose we want to see where the average balance is greater than 400. So let's substitute customer number for AVG balance in parentheses. It says error, group function is not allowed here. That's because we have to use the halving clause to restrict groups of information. We'll discuss that in the next video. Thank you for your time, and may God bless you.